This podcast is part of the Pull Up a Chair podcast network. Let's build community through connection, conversation, and collaboration. This podcast is sponsored by Lever Consulting, editing with a purpose. Check them out at leverconsulting.com for a free consultation.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on a show.
Hi, I'm Jake,
And I'm V,
and you're listening to the It's Working podcast.
where we take deep dives into mental health, breaking stigmas, and starting conversations.
Oh, you know, I try to find a purpose in my life to drive me, to guide me. Oh, doctor, I feel dead inside.
We are not healthcare professionals, and our opinions should not be taken as facts or as medical advice. To see any sources, resources, or study we speak about in this podcast, please check out our website, linked in the description of this podcast. If you or a loved one is struggling, there is hope and there is help. Some helpful resources can be found on our website, linked in the description of this podcast. It's Working Podcast is a production from the Pull Up a Chair Foundation. All opinions in this podcast belong to our hosts and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Pull Up a Chair Foundation. All right, guys, welcome back. We're having another Jake Central episode discussing peer work, something I haven't ever really done.
Leading the charge once again on this one. Let's see how we do. So, peer work, it's, as I understand it, it's like a something that's been around for a number of years, but is only like just now sort of like entering the limelight. We talked a little bit about that during my brief training couple months ago, and part of the reason why is because it was met with some adversity at the very beginning, because peer workers are people who sort of like step in and they assist like people going through like mental health crises, or they're just sort of like struggling, as we all do from time to time. But people were concerned that peer workers were going to take the spot of like trained professionals, actually.
Which is, you know, the kind of stuff that I do. I work with kids.
Yeah.
And I've trained in a specific avenue. I've never worked with somebody who's not below me in social circumstances. Oh my God, that sounds terrible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so it doesn't take much to really become like a peer specialist. Like I took like a 2-month, I think, training, like a course on like the history of, and then also like how to operate in peer work. And at the end of it, there was another brief training, and then I was certified, and I began to operate in that capacity. I've also been doing peer work for like the last 3 years or so, unofficially. We would go to schools and we would just sort of like teach classes on like, you know, healthy behaviors and how to navigate life, choose your friends wisely, like all that stuff. Like
all the hard stuff.
Yeah, like the intervention level of like, you know, high school students before they get out into the real world and they encounter that stuff, and we're trying to just equip them for life before they have to really experience life,
before they're expected to be an adult.
Right, that one. Because I'm gonna go back and catch myself there, because some of them have already like really experienced life, but this just sort of like, you know, adding to like their playbook as they like navigate through the rest of it. Yeah, it's really rewarding work. I really enjoy doing what I do. I took a break from it for like a year, did construction. Then I found out like ultimately I want to get back into it because I just really like doing the interpersonal stuff and like helping people. So,
which is how you ended up on a podcast like this.
Yeah, which is how I actually landed this spot as like co-host on this podcast. Pretty soon here, we're actually going to start like I'm going to be leading a group on dealing with loss and grief and even depression.
So what exactly, I know you said that a lot of it's like the interpersonal and teaching them. Mm-hmm. What kind of things do you do on a day-to-day basis doing peer work? Like, what does that actually like look like? Okay.
Well, I can speak to the former, what I did prior to officially being certified than I can to like the actual group work, because I have not actually held my first group yet. So I wouldn't be able to speak on that. But when I first joined and started doing peer work, we were given a manual, and in this manual had like all of these like facts, these activities, and then we had a PowerPoint assigned with it. We would go to classrooms and we would just sort of spend an hour with students, like, that the teachers would block outside of like class. And we would speak to the students in that room about like all these things. Of those, we would talk about like health and nutrition. We would talk about their lives online, like how they navigate like social media and all that stuff.
That's so freaking important.
We talk about cultivating like in-person relationships as well. And then there was managing your thoughts. We actually taught this thing called the thought model, which talks about the importance of like really understanding each portion of like how your thoughts occur. Something that I really remember from that one was like a lot of times people like jump straight into action after like encountering like a thought, and they don't really stop to think about the many different pathways that they can take instead. A lot of times like this is like, someone makes you angry, so then you get angry, and then like you hit them. Oh, but it's like there are several things you could have done aside from that.
I mean, that escalated quickly.
Well, this is one of because we're dealing with high schoolers. Yeah. And sometimes, like, the when emotions, you're in the middle of your feelings, someone's, like, in your face, you're getting, like, worked up. That's where your brain goes. You just want to, like, punch someone, wherever.
Bop them in the nose.
Bop them in the nose, bop them in the noggin. And then now you're suspended and, like, you're sort of, like, really messing up your shot here. So, that is just a few things that we talk about in peer work. And so we'll host those classes, and then we also try and create like an environment at the center where students feel safe to come and hang out after school. And like, we always, as me and my coworkers, we try and make ourselves like very available to our students as well. That's a little bit harder for me to do these days because I'm also building maintenance, but whenever I have an opportunity, I like to make the rounds and sort of check in with the students that I work with, make sure they're doing okay. And recently actually just got in touch with some of my former students before I started working at the center, and that was really cool. They're doing well. Like, my gosh, like, it's so cool to see like how, and they remember, that was the cooler thing too, I think, is they remember the moments of like the things that I did. Because they were part of a grander program. They had other mentors in their lives, but like meeting up with them, there was something about like the fact that they wanted to meet up with me and not like everyone else was like, oh, okay, this would be interesting. But they really remembered the pieces of advice that I would give them. And specifically, I think these were all students that during the pandemic, I helped lead a D&D group for them. None of them had ever played, and I taught them how to play. I helped them build their characters, and in just such a choice was a really hard thing to come by, because we were being told like shelter in place, like, all these things, and they're high school students, so they don't have like, some of them didn't have cars to like escape the house. Providing them with this place that they could go and escape to for like hours at a time and do whatever they wanted was huge.
Yeah, I'm sure that made all the difference, because it was such a strange time for everybody to be alive. We did a whole episode on that earlier in the season. Yeah. But for children specifically, it disrupted every aspect of their lives in a way that adults can't really comprehend, because when you're a kid, your whole life is school, your whole life is socialization, and you're supposed to be getting educated, but let's be honest, school is where kids learn to be people. Yeah, that's where all your friends are. That's where you learn how to navigate the world. Like, it's so important. And so years later, because of like this thing that I like, that I just put out into the ether for them to like try and like figure out like, oh, is this something I want to do? Like, I took a chance, honestly. Like, I remember the message going out into like the general chat that we had at the time, like, hey, I'm gonna start a D&D group if anyone's interested, and like getting like a few responses here and there. But if I went back in time and told that version of me, like, hey, this thing that you're doing, it's gonna go a lot farther than you think, and while you may believe you're just hosting a game night, like, you're actually changing lives right now, so keep it up.
I don't know that I would have actually believed me. Like, yeah, okay, but we're just rolling dice or we're just having like shenanigans. But like, I was doing peer work
Well, not only
without even
that,
realizing it. Like, it was cool.
Not only that, like D&D and other like highly social games have been proven, I will put the studies down below,
Mhm.
to actually have a positive social impact on the mental health of individuals who are participating
Mhm.
in quote unquote healthy environments, which is why Time to Tabletop, the company that I work for, use it
Mhm.
as like our base tool when we're teaching social and emotional education.
Yeah.
Because it's such a powerful resource. You're putting yourself into somebody else's shoes and you're living
Yeah.
their life. And yeah, you roll dice, you make jokes, you have fun with your friends, but forcing yourself to think about somebody else's thoughts and emotions
Mhm.
is so powerful.
It's so great for perspective building. Like, yeah. And that's exactly what I like tried to pitch to like my former boss. Like when I was like, can I run a D&D group? And then he laughed at me like, yeah, okay, we'll see if anyone shows up to that. That is like, that is my biggest victory at that old job was like, I had the largest group and I had the most consistent group running for the longest time. And like, it's not a numbers game, but it's like, you know, yes, because like,
it's not a numbers
game.
game, but you won by the numbers.
I didn't truly care about the numbers until I looked at the number. I realized like every other game group had like sort of fallen off or like, you know, they weren't meeting as often. And here were my students like, after every class, like on Wednesdays or Thursdays, they were still like hitting me up personally, like, we're still going to play on Friday, right? Like we're down for Friday at 8. And I'm like, yeah, we're down. I didn't make a post like, you know, Friday at 8, you can depend on it. And they'd show up every week.
Yeah.
And we would play till midnight sometimes.
Oh, why are you doing that?
Past midnight.
Sleep is important for a growing mind.
It was all about the game. And some of the, like, at this point, no one was working really. Like, and this was my job. And I didn't have to report in until like around noon anyway. So it's like, I didn't mind. And yeah, okay. But like, it wasn't even about it. It was like, if they're having fun, then like, you know, who am I to like stop their fun? So it was peer work.
The DM, that's who you are.
Huh?
The DM, that's who you are.
That's true. Yeah. And they still come around. So like, I had no idea what an effect that it would have had on them and their mental health doing that sort of thing. So after that little revelation, I really like, you know, decided to like hone in on this. And so when I was approached with the opportunity to get certified in peer specialist and become a peer specialist, I decided like, yeah, this is definitely like leveling up that skill. Because I wanted to learn more. I wanted to be more effective as like a mentor and as like a leader in like the youth center. And so this just seemed like a natural next step.
And I mean, you're really good with it. When the youth comes out to our, I can't believe we're bringing it up again, the Kurai bone fighting group that we're in, the younger individuals glom onto you.
Yeah.
You are the sensei of the bow and arrow.
Yeah, well, I mean, that could be for a number of reasons. I would say that's more or less because the bow is like the coolest weapon. And they see me use the bow.
The first thing everybody grabs is that ridiculous great sword.
That's true. I am guilty of gravitating toward the great sword.
I didn't
first.
because I can barely lift the thing.
I'm cringing right now. That's accurate. I went for the great sword first before I went for the bow. Oh my gosh. And I had no idea. I had no idea at the time. But it didn't take me long to figure out like the true power of the bow. Anyways, I say that to say like I think it's multiple avenues though. Like I do really enjoy like mentoring and just sort of like helping people like achieve like the most, because I look at people and I see like, you know, their potential, especially like when you get a glimpse. There's my favorite thing is like looking at someone younger and like seeing like a glimpse of the potential. Like they might do this thing one time really well. Or like this one thing gives them a lot more joy. They just don't know how to do it. And then just like honing it, like just much like a piece of like, you know, hot steel on an anvil and just like drawing out like, you know, the sword that was lying within that like iron ingot or whatever. Like it's my favorite thing to do is like help people like get to that spot.
I think we should maybe expand a little bit more on what you were mentioning earlier, how some people were concerned that it would replace professionals.
Mm-hmm.
What role do you feel like peer work should play in the upbringing of an individual?
What role do I think peer work should be? Okay. So the answer is sort of like it's grander than just like one path, because there are multiple avenues that peer work can apply to. Like peer work could be like, you know, the what is it, the Big Brothers and Sisters organization, where it's like it's people that are just, you know, at a different spot in life that are able to shed light on situations like that. I would say like that's sort of like peer work as well. Like, but when I had brought that up, I was saying specifically like peer specialists,
Okay.
right? Like working in mental health fields. The concern was that it would take over like the spot for like counselors and therapists.
Oh,
Like
God.
people that go away to school for like years and they like develop these skills.
What I
that are now
started to
being-
do and stopped pretty close to the end of.
Right. So there was this like underlying fear, I think, originally that like peer work, or like with the knowledge that anyone could become a peer specialist with enough training, albeit much less training than, you know, a trained professional like a counselor or therapist. The rising concern was like, well, there's going to be like this wave of peer specialists come in, and they're going to take all the jobs of like these counselors and therapists that have dedicated years of their life to the study of like mental health and helping people, which is not true, because peer specialists operate in that middle ground of like the peers that we work with, and then also they're just underneath counselors and therapists, because they are sort of like the first step toward recovery. Like it's a place that you can go to talk about your issues, the things that are like sort of like eating you. It's not really a peer specialist's job to like address the traumas and like the hurts and the harms along someone's life to the extent of like a counselor or a therapist. Peer specialists are sort of like, if I could try and describe it more accurately, it's sort of like no, I don't want to say that. It's more like a friend that's just really open to listening to your problems and like trying to help you work through it.
Okay, so like, you might be the one that helps direct a student to counseling, or be like, oh,
Yeah.
you're by and large actually doing pretty good. Just give you that little extra oomph to get you through.
Exactly.
I see. That makes
peer
sense.
specialists can refer to multiple resources as
Just
they
like
see it come up. Yeah.
The difference between a counselor and an actual therapist. They have very
Yes.
similar roles, but they are not the same thing.
Yes.
Their focus in those interactions aren't the same thing, even though it looks like they're listening and then giving advice. It's
Mhm.
not the same role. I see. That makes sense.
Yeah. And so that is very soon what I'm going to start doing is when I host my very first group.
You're going to do like the group setting.
Mm-hmm.
That's intense.
It is, well, okay, so we're starting out with like small groups. It's going to
Okay.
be like four or five students max.
Okay.
And I'm no stranger to working with like groups of students already. It's just basically the thing that I think is going to be the most challenging part of that is the curriculum, because we do have a guided sort of like, we have like a guided like field book that we're trying to work through. I think learning that is going to be the most difficult part, because I think the group of students that I have now, the relationship will come very easily, and that's normally one of the biggest hurdles is like for peer work is like developing that relationship. But I've got a pretty good group, and I've already spent some time beforehand just getting to know them. So that part is already a-okay. It's just learning how to navigate the new system. I think
see.
is going to be the biggest hurdle for me personally. I thought it was going to be signups for a second. Like I went from like no students enrolled in my program to like half my class filled like in a day, because I approached 2 students after a class on Monday actually And I had the conversation with them, and both of them were like, we're in. So that was already 2 out of 4 or 5 students signed up. Just with the conversation, because I, spent the previous week getting to know them a little bit more and sort of like their lives outside. And I knew that they could benefit from the program based on that. So I was like, I think you guys should sign up, because I could see it really being useful to you. And this isn't just me trying to pad my numbers. Like, I honestly think there's something for you guys here, which is why I'm approaching you guys first. And they were like,
that made
awesome.
them very special.
Yeah, I hope so.
I mean, I felt very special. But then again, I was one of those, like, really troubled kids that should have been in, like, very intense therapy. Maybe even medication. But I survived. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
No more emotional scars.
Oh, boy.
But, like, the age that you're grouping towards are, like, really focusing on high schoolers, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, like, post-high school, that, like, transition age.
Mm-hmm. I know this group is mostly, I think it's, like, seniors. Like, people who would be on their way out. Like, juniors and seniors, I think.
God, that's such a scary time in life.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so I had a teacher in high school.
Mm-hmm.
He was my AP English teacher, and he, I feel like he taught me a lot in life by just being there as a human.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing he said that really, like, always stuck with me is the older you get, the less cute you get. The less cute you get, the less people are willing to help you. High school is that last real time and age where you can, like, rub it in with the cute factor.
Mm.
And I'm a year older than everybody else in my high school because I like repeated a grade.
Yeah.
Because I was a troubled child.
Yeah.
But that is so true, though.
Mm-hmm.
I'm, like, almost 30, and I see a high schooler, and I'm like, oh my god, you're so cute and little!
Mm-hmm.
And then I see a college student, it's like, oh, good luck, Chuck.
Yeah. Ugh.
It's a different phase of that middle school awkwardness where you're going from one phase in your life to
Mm-hmm.
another one. In middle school, you're going from being a child into being a teenager.
Yep.
In college, you're going from being like a high school kid to being an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And all the cringe that comes with any transitional time in life.
Mm. Without the cute packaging.
Without the cute,
Yeah.
Because with the middle schooler, it's like, you poor little duckling.
Mm-hmm.
You get somebody in college, it's like, oh god, just please tell me you're brushing your teeth.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're in college and you don't know how to brush your teeth, I think...
Well, some people revert. It's really, for me it wasn't, because I had more of a ramp up period just because of the nature of my childhood
Mm-hmm.
into adulthood. But I know for some people it's very stark, their treatment from being treated like a high school student, treated like a child, to being expected to be a fully functioning adult within a matter of a year. Like, that's
Right.
too much, that's ttoo rough, that's too harsh.
Yeah.
And that's why so many people, like, crash and burn right away and then bounce back in their later 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And which is why I really appreciate programs like this, what happens at the Sacramento Youth Center, because helping people go through that transition, I feel like will make all the difference later in life. Even if they come from, like, higher up middle class society, if they don't have that support, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter where they came from. And then all the more important for people who come from rougher backgrounds to have that support.
And that's the goal too. And I think one of the biggest hurdles that we have right now for the Sacramento Youth Center in this program is actually helping students to understand that it is so accessible to them. Like, we're trying to, like, get so many programs and resources going. Like, I think it's difficult for our students to really, like, understand, like, what's for them. But the answer is it's all for them. And, like, it doesn't matter, like, where you're from or, like, what you're doing. Like, anyone can benefit from these services. And so,
and then being expected to know that too. Because when you're a middle school student, you get your first, like, school counselor who's like, here are your classes, what are you signing up for?
Mm-hmm.
In high school, they're a little bit more loose. You get to college and they're like, hi, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And that's if they're even going to college. And if you don't go to college, that's that much less structure in your life to have.
Right.
And so I'm sure for a lot of the Sacramento Youth students, it's like the first time they're really expected. It's like, hey, you need to take some initiative to get services for yourself because you're going to be an adult soon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's that, but then also you have like mentors like myself and my other coworkers that are constantly telling them like, we've got this going on. We've got this going on. In a couple weeks, we're going to have like, this trip and like, we have so much going on. It's like
decision fatigue
at that point. So, we have so much going on. I just don't know that the students know like what's really what they're wanting to do.
Well, I mean, it's an exciting point in their lives because that's really where they get to choose who they want to be and what they want to do for their life. And there's, oh my God, all of the freaking options ever. Like, when you ask a little kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? They always choose, like, these big, flashy jobs that everybody sees and everybody knows of. Because they haven't seen, they don't know. They don't know what's out there.
Yeah.
While we're on the topic of options and choice and services, next week's episode is going to bring in my husband, who's going to talk about accessibility to disabled adults and how there's resources similar to that, but for people that no longer have that cute factor.
Oh boy.
Because I met a couple of your students and it's like, oh my God, look at you. You're what, 19? Adorable. You're adorable.
Yeah.
But eventually, your students aren't going to be 19 anymore.
Yeah. Eventually. Oh my gosh, I encountered that with the students I was talking about earlier in this episode, the ones that sought me out again, and we all went to like a mall and we like had boba or something together. It was like really cool, but as I'm looking across the table, I'm like, you guys don't look the same.
Yeah, they're no longer kids.
In those 2 years that it took for them to go from like seniors in high school to now like jobs and like adults, it's like, wow, life has really gotten to you guys. But I'm not going to say that out loud, but like, wow.
It's a transitional period and a lot too, and that's like, we're not going to get into age gap relationships in this episode, but why it is creepy if a 17-year-old's with a 20-something-year-old.
Yeah.
Because the difference is just astronomical.
Yeah.
The experience is just astronomically different. And not having like adults in their lives, may it be a counselor, a peer mentor, or just somebody to be like, hey, let me make sure you're actually okay and teach you what's actually normal. Because you don't know what's normal. You have no concept of what is out there. You have no concept of what the world is like. Yeah. Because high school and middle school and the little bit of life that you've experienced in your 17, 18, 19 years on Earth is just so minuscule in compared to like what the world is actually like. Like your first 4 years, you don't even remember at that point.
Yeah. Well, so actually what's interesting about that is I think for me, I found myself having the opposite conversation where my students that I work with a lot more have experienced so much of life.
But do they think that that is normal? Or do they think...
And then I have to have the conversation of
that's
like,
why it's important.
This is not how this is supposed to go. I'm sorry you encountered that. But, here's how we can, adjust going forward. And here's a little bit more hope. Because it's not always going to be like this. This is a rough patch.
And they would have no idea. They would have no concept.
Because it's been their reality for the entirety of their lives or,
Exactly, which is why I find your work just so important. Now that we're getting towards the end, what is your final advice?
Final advice would probably be that, would it be too cliche if I said, just have the conversation? Or actually, I'll say find a trusted adult. Find a trusted adult because while they may not be a peer specialist or in peer work, like I do think an adult that you trust, or someone with like more life experience that you can like tap into is like so important. And I have like those people in my life, and I'm an adult, but I have people above me with like more life experience that I can go to. And
A more adulty adult.
There's a phrase that we used in like the old curriculum, and it was known as like find your Yoda. Find your Yoda. Find someone that's like, you know, further along in the journey, more knowledgeable, willing to teach.
I like that.
Yeah.
I guess my advice would be use your cute factor while you have it. You're going to grow old so fast. Like, it happens in a blink of an eye. I'm no longer cute when I get on the table and I dance.
Oh my god.
It's cringe now.
Oh boy.
It is cringe now. So enjoy your youth. Don't try to grow up too fast. Because, you know, it's going to be gone. Life's short, man.
That's
Life's
a bit
short.
of a downer, but also it's kind of true.
Me dancing at a table being cringy is a downer. Thanks.
No, that life is almost over. Like, the part you were going, like, very,
Yeah.
like, you know, everyone dies.
I didn't say anything about death. I just said life is
That's
short.
where I went.
So you're a downer.
Okay, I'm a downer. Yeah, sure.
All right. Thanks for listening, you guys. We'll catch you in the next one.
See ya. Join the conversation. Find us on social media at It's Working Podcast or link below.
Thanks for listening, and we hope you join us next week.
Be kind to yourself and to others.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on a show. Oh, you know, I try to find a purpose in my life to drive me, to guide me. Oh, doctor, I feel dead inside.
Hello, I am Patrick,
I'm Andrew. And I'm Christian.
And I'm Allie.
and we are Rad Theater, a podcast where a bunch of friends play role-playing games and share a single brain cell, and the GM doesn't always have it. Oh, and it's theater spelled the correct way, Theatre.
Okay, let's talk about Elever Consulting. They help you create so many things. A perfect personal statement, application essays, presentations. They help create writings that truly represent you. They've got writers, editors, and even researchers. Elever Consulting can make all your stuff easy to read, understandable, and enjoyable. They truly take editing to the next level. Not only do they have flexible rates, they also offer assistance with college applications and job seeking. Check them out at eleverconsulting.com and get a free consultation.